International news now, and rescue operations are continuing in the Democratic Republic of Congo's Lake Kivu, where a passenger boat capsized on Monday. At least 13 people have died and over 140 are still missing. Rescue workers were able to save nearly 40 passengers. Now, it seems the boat may have been overloaded. It was heading for Goma, and many of the passengers are believed to be traders. Former Peruvian President Alan Garcia has died in hospital. He shot himself in the head as police arrived at his house to arrest him. He was rushed to hospital where he died. Garcia was accused of taking bribes from the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht. He claims he consistently denied. His death has been confirmed by the president, Martin Vizcarra. Firefighters who battled the Notre Dame blaze were honored at the Élysée Palace today. Almost 300 firefighters were hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron. The cathedral spire was destroyed and its roof gutted in Monday's blaze, but the bell towers were still standing and the firemen were able to save many valuable artworks. It took them 14 hours to quell the fire. Now, just what was U.S. President Donald Trump's role in the Russian interference of the 2016 presidential campaign? Well, a long-awaited report into the matter has finally been released to the public. A summary of it was made public in March, and while Trump claims it exonerates him, critics are wondering just how much information was left out of the redacted version. For more on this, our New York correspondent, Will Denslow, is on the line. William, this redacted version that was released a couple of hours ago, is there anything new in it?
Well, Tony, essentially this very much fleshed out what was released when it came to a 4-page report issued by the Attorney General William Barr, where he essentially laid out the two major questions that those across the United States and across the world have been wondering over this 22-month period that this investigation has been underway. They, of course, were: is there evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia, and did President Trump obstruct justice? Now, the message, essentially the message coming out of this report was a no when it came to collusion with Russia. Said that this report essentially came out and said that while there were numerous links between Trump officials and Russian officials, there was not enough evidence to suggest there was direct collusion, or, as Robert Mueller himself said in this report, whether there was coordination. However, he did essentially say it was unclear whether the efforts that have been going on over this 22-month period by President Trump amounted to obstruction of justice. But I think a few tidbits really coming out of the report is just the extent that President Trump was perhaps concerned about it. According to this report, at one stage he used an expletive when Robert Mueller was appointed to this investigation, and according to the report, President Trump is quoted as saying, "Oh my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency."
Now, William, the Democrats are hoping for a smoking gun to come out of this whole process. What is their response to this redacted version, the release of it?
Well, plenty of fury, as you might imagine, from Democrats. Plenty of that anger very much being pointed to William Barr, very much accusing him of not being straight down the line with the American people. Of course, this all relates to the amount of information that was redacted in this report. Of course, there are plenty of things, many pointing to things like the alleged involvement between the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks, for example. That was a section of the report that was indeed heavily redacted. So that's certainly a huge source of frustration, but there is some potential fuel to the flames as far as Democrats are concerned going forward, namely in the fact that, according to this report, essentially stating that Congress is perhaps empowered to go forward to look into the corrupt use of presidential power. So perhaps that could fuel Democrat investigations that, of course, it's very important to remember, are indeed ongoing. However, the House Speaker and Democrat Nancy Pelosi has herself said over recent weeks that she's not interested in going forward with impeachment proceedings. So this is also seen as somewhat of a divisive issue as far as Democrats into just how hard they want to press the Republicans and President Trump as, of course, we head towards this vital election season.
Talk to us about the Republicans. What's their response to this, and also the president himself?
Well, when William Barr's initial report came out, we really saw the start of what could widely be seen as a victory lap from President Trump, and that has very much continued with this release of this full redacted report. President Trump saying, of course, that it was a good day, plenty of tweets going out saying no collusion, no obstruction. We've heard from his campaign manager for the 2020 elections, Brad Pascal, saying that he's completely exonerated once again. Kellyanne Conway, who's been an aide and advisor to President Trump for several years now, has said this is the best day since essentially President Trump's first day in office. So plenty of positivity coming from President Trump and the Republicans. They'll certainly hope to put this business behind them and start gearing towards the elections. But as far as the American people are concerned, perhaps this does little in terms of swaying people that hadn't already made their minds up. Of course, plenty of grey areas for those that believe that there was some murky business involving President Trump and Russia. But as far as the Republicans and those leaning towards and supporters of President Trump, they could say that this is clear evidence after 22 months of an investigation that President Trump did nothing wrong.
So is this the end of this now? Is this, we're going to draw a line? Is this the end of this? Can the Democrats now focus on something else, maybe health care, and the Republicans move on from this?
Well, I think it's highly unlikely that this will be the last that we hear of the Mueller report, and the last will be discussing it, of course. Plenty of redactions, so it'll be very interesting to see what exactly comes out of that. There have been messages coming from Michael Cohen, President Trump's former attorney, saying that he could perhaps fill in some of these blanks. Of course, there are plenty of questions going forward. Of course, one key issue for Democrats is the fact that President Trump wasn't interviewed in person himself. The Mueller report saying that there was a real frustration. They say that the written answers given by President Trump weren't adequate enough. So there are plenty of questions that are still remain to be answered as far as many Democrats see things going forward. Of course, there's a huge movement in the Democratic Party that they want to see more investigations, potentially impeachment proceedings going forward, should their individual investigations lead them to that conclusion. But of course, the other half say, hey, maybe we should just cut our losses at this stage, focus, as you so rightly mentioned, on key issues facing the United States, such as the state of the economy, these trade war with China, things like that, foreign policy, healthcare, as you so rightly mentioned, as we head towards this vital elections. And of course, it's an incredibly crowded field as far as Democratic candidates are concerned. Dozens, really. So it'll be very interesting to see what these Democratic presidential hopefuls will use and how they'll be responding to this report as we head towards this election season.
All right. Thank you so much, William Denslow, reporting for us in New York. It's going to be interesting times in the U.S. That report came out about a couple of hours ago. So I'm sure so many other things will come out of it that we are not able to cover right now. Stay with us, because election polls have ranked Cyril Ramaphosa as the most popular political party leader polled over the past 12 months. How is it that the president has been able to garner such wide support, and will this translate to votes at the polls next month? We'll discuss this next.